Hey, power people. Welcome to Renewable Rides. I'm Gareth Evans.
And I'm Dan Roberts. We're the founding team of VECKTA, a platform and marketplace streamlining how companies buy on-site energy.
In each episode, we'll uncover the latest trends, challenges, and triumphs relating to the energy transition through the experiences of our team and our inspiring guests.
Our goal is to help companies take action to create a resilient, profitable, sustainable, and thriving energy future.
Let's go. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Renewable Rides with Dan and I. And today we're excited to have the second episode of our Pain Point series, determining what is best for my site in terms of energy technologies. Dan, it's been a little while. How you doing?
Doing quite well. Good to have you back, Gareth. I've spent the last couple of weeks outside of work. Got a visit from some family that was in town from Houston, which was a nice surprise. I didn't anticipate that, but they just happened to be here in Southern California. And then, in the heat, been trying to stay cool with the boys. We got this inflatable alligator thing for the backyard. It's like a water slide, little kiddie pool, and they cannot get enough of it. So that's been quite nice. While it's been decently warm here. How about yourself?
Yeah, I had an amazing road trip up to Oregon. It's nice to see some forests, some lakes, some rivers. A far change from San Diego. We got to mountain bike, hike, and do some paddling down the river, which was incredible with the family. And to top it off, we finished with a few races just outside Portland. So he and I did a 5K race, and he was proud to beat me. I actually couldn't keep up with him. He sprint finished and beat me. And Melanie ended up becoming the national champ for her age group for off-road duathlon, and she qualified for the World Championship. So super awesome way to finish.
Yeah. You might describe that after your 100-miler and everything. It might be a power couple, or with E coming up, a power family at this point on some of these outdoor adventure races.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's super awesome. And it was certainly hot. You know, you said it was hot, and up in Bend, we saw one of the supermarkets, their power was going off. And as we walked in, really topical for this conversation, as we walked into the store, literally every staff member was emptying shelves to try and take anything that was going to go bad in the heat into a freezer out back, because the store had lost all its refrigeration. So I think a really good example of on-site energy needs. And then, yeah, it's been pretty extreme, hasn't it? Hot everywhere. Outages as a result. We had the hurricane come through Texas, knocked out power for 2.5 million people. So I think with every week that passes, energy is becoming more and more topical. So excited to dig into today's discussion. And I think it's a really nice follow-on to our last episode, which was, how do I prioritize across a portfolio of facilities where I'm going to get a good return on investment from an on-site energy system? So now that we've determined that, what should we actually build at the facilities where we've determined on-site energy makes sense? What technologies? How do I go about it? So Dan, what are you hearing in the market from our customers who are now at this stage?
Yeah, it's a variety of different comments or stages that we're hearing from both customers and prospects. I'd say first and foremost, one of the more common things that we hear is, I have suppliers contacting me all the time to sell me solar, and is solar right for me? How much? I'm not really sure how to determine that. Or I've received an unsolicited bid. Is this system right for me? Is this the right partner to me? While we're not going to dive into the partners and selecting suppliers on this episode, we will do it in future episodes. Another thing I've heard is I'm not an energy expert, or we don't really have any energy experts within our company. And I've tried to figure this out, but it's super complex and overwhelming, especially when I try to think about more than one technology. Couple others, we're not considering batteries because they're expensive. Well, there's different ways to use them, and it depends on the specifics of that particular site, which we'll get into. Or we're electrifying our fleet, or we're electrifying things within our processes, and we don't actually have access to the necessary power from the utility. What are our options? So, Gareth, within that context, what are some of the initial questions that business leaders should be asking themselves when thinking about this?
Yeah. So we want to start with the macro questions, don't we? So for now, we've gone from across my portfolio, where should I look? This is now for a specific site. And each specific site and facility might have different needs, wants, and constraints. And so, first of all, am I doing this because I want to reduce my energy costs? Am I doing it because I'm suffering the power outages we talked about in the introduction and I want to have the resilience? Is emissions reduction super important to my operation because I've got contracts that are dependent on it? Or is the public kind of expecting and demanding it? Or am I looking to use it as a branding opportunity to suddenly have a solar panel on my roof or a wind turbine at my facility, such that you now attract the positive attention, the positive, engaging, retaining the best employees, the best in customers? So there's lots of ways we can utilize on-site energy systems, but at a macro level, as business leaders, we need to determine which one of those is the priority. Or which combination of those do we really want to build our system for? We also want to consider, do we already have on-site generation at our facility? Some facilities have already deployed diesel generator backups, or maybe they were one of the early adopters of solar and they've already got some assets, but technologies have improved, commercial models have changed, the cost of utility powers and tariff structures have changed. So how do I consider what I've already got and where I want to get to? And then how will my operation change over the next 5, 10, 20 plus years? Because the industry is moving quickly and there's huge opportunities for companies to be reducing operational costs, increasing efficiencies, making facilities more lean and mean. And this comes in the form of electrifying equipment, deploying EV charging for fleets or for employees. And these are kind of critical questions to be asking ourselves. And we recently had a customer, didn't we, Dan, where they have lab equipment that they need to have resilience for. They can't afford to have that equipment go off because they're taking biopsies. If they lose that, they lose the opportunity. And so they can't afford to lose power to that critical equipment, but they also want to ramp up their business opportunity and deploy more equipment. So you can't build a system that's designed for equipment needs today if then 6 months from now you're going to suddenly double the energy needs. And so super important to have some visibility over where you want to get to. And then lastly, I'd just say, who needs to be involved in this decision-making process? Because as we see a lot, businesses want to do something, but these systems, because they bring so much value, they impact finance, procurement, contracts, operations. So we need to make sure we have alignment across the business that we want to get after this and how do we want to go about it. So Dan, now that we've kind of at a macro level determined from a business perspective what the priorities and opportunities are, what do we need to be thinking about at a site level?
So at a site level, and some of these are going to be similar to what we had spoken about on the previous episode when you're looking across a portfolio, but now we really want to drill in on an individual site. So first and foremost, what are the site constraints? And these come in many forms. When we're thinking about solar, what roof area, if any, do we have available? Is there any open space or open land within our property lines that could be used for ground mount? Are parking lots available for carport solar? And while that's more expensive, are there other benefits? We were just meeting with a client yesterday who wants to put a carport for clients that are coming to their particular facility. Are there buildings or tree shading? And what is the roof orientation? Those are all related to solar. When we're thinking about batteries, are there areas for shipping containers? In some cases, 20 or 40-foot shipping containers, depending on the storage needs that are available to install those types of technologies. Is there a natural gas connection? So what is the other opportunities that we may have? Beyond that, how is the site actually consuming energy? When it comes to electricity, we typically like to look at the consumption in either 15, 30, or 60-minute intervals for an entire year. So how much electricity is consumed every 15 minutes for an entire year? And that tells us the differences throughout a day, throughout a week, throughout a month, throughout a season, and how they're consuming. Other questions, which are not always applicable, but when we're talking about manufacturing and other processes, are there thermal loads that are being served? And are there opportunities to leverage those thermal loads either through fuel switching and on electrification, or leveraging the waste heat that's coming off of those and running them through other processes? In more nuanced cases, we need to consider, is my manufacturing process or am I a chemical plant that we are consuming things like hydrogen or carbon dioxide, in which case maybe a fuel cell has some potential viability. Beyond consuming, how am I paying for energy? So what are my energy charges, which we've talked about in an early episode? Are they flat? Is there some sort of variation between the time of day that I'm consuming? Do I have demand charges? And if so, how high are my demand charges? These are going to impact the composition of technologies and sizes of those technologies. And then lastly, which we've touched on a couple of these in different episodes, what are the market conditions? What incentives do I have available at this particular facility? Are there interconnection limits or penalties based on deploying a system? I actually just heard earlier today from a national retail chain that they're now, unfortunately, paying $72,000 a year in fees for a solar system that was built at one of their facilities in Alabama, that they frankly would have not built the solar system if they were aware of those penalties. Some other market conditions to consider: what are the costs of equipment in that particular region? Cost of constructing and maintaining systems? What are fuel prices? Outage risks? Grid carbon emissions if you're going down the decarbonization and sustainability path? And also, what are some of the opportunities to interact with the grid and find additional value streams? Things like feed-in tariffs or net metering if I'm ever producing more energy than I'm consuming, and I maybe either don't have storage or I've already topped up all my storage capacity. Am I going to get paid for feeding it into the grid? Or are there demand response programs that I can participate in from my utility? These will all play into the economics, the system technologies that are optimal, as well as the sizes of those technologies. So, Gareth, maybe you can hit on a couple examples here.
Yeah, Dan, I think as we discussed in the last Pain Point series, due to all those variables and constraints and opportunities that you just described, it means that your systems are never going to be the same for any one of your facilities. They're never going to be identical because there are so many different variables to consider. By way of an example, you may have an identical manufacturing facility in terms of footprint and how it consumes energy, but in different geographies like Montana, California, Texas. But they're going to have extremely different energy costs from the utility. Their outage risk is going to be very different. Their renewable potential is going to be significantly different. And the emission profile of those grids is going to be radically different. And so as a result, the system that ultimately is designed is going to be a very different system. On the flip side of that, you may be the same customer who has two completely different facilities, but in the same town. Maybe you've got a food processing facility on one side of the road and a cold storage facility on the other side of the road. And even though they've got the same owner and they're in the same town, you think maybe the energy prices would be similar. They actually might be on completely different energy tariffs because of the way they consume energy. They might have different energy consumption load profiles, which will impact the technologies that will be chosen. And they may even qualify for completely different incentives just because of the geographic difference. The Inflation Reduction Act has different requirements for low income and energy communities. And so you could be on the wrong side of a border or on the right side, and it may make a huge difference to the economics of a system. And so it's important to make sure that we do consider these variables right up front and we know what we're getting ourselves into. And Dan, do you want to talk to us a little bit about how you assess these options to determine the right outcome?
Yeah, I think the really important thing here is ensuring that you are looking at what is right for your business and your needs and what the return on investment is. And in most cases, it's a financial return on investment, but there could be other factors at play here. But doing so while not really being influenced by another party's or another company's agenda. What I mean by that is doing so by removing the agenda of them trying to sell you something. How do you evaluate all these technologies based on what you're trying to do, what your consumption profile is, to build what's right for the business, and then once you identify that, then go and engaging the market. So really, you want to be able to have a technically and financially designed system that really answers the questions around what technologies and how much of each, or what are the sizes of each, how will they operate with each other to meet my needs and interacting with the grid. What will it all cost me, both from the build of the system, but also operating that system, and looking at some of the different commercial models that I might consider. What will the savings be, both cost and dollar savings, but also emission savings and lost productivity savings from resilience? And what other value streams can I enjoy over the next 25 years? I mean, all of this information comes together and can be packaged in slightly different ways to get the internal endorsement and approval from energy committees, executive committees, boards of directors to move projects forward into getting competitive quotes from the market. And by doing this analysis up front and determining what is right for the business, it is really the cheapest insurance policy that you can invest in to ensure that this one-way door decision, like we like to call it, that is a 25-year plus investment, is going to yield the most value for you. So now you can go to market for the solution you want and need versus letting the market sell to you or tell you what is best for you, which in fact is just what is fits their agenda of selling to you. So for single-digit tens of thousands of dollars, you can invest now. You'll often save hundreds of thousands, millions, some cases in very large system, tens of millions of dollars over the long run. And so it's really important to not take shortcuts at this stage to yield the greatest potential value. Gareth, you've recently worked on a couple different examples that might be worth highlighting the value here.
Yeah, a really interesting example whereby met a big box store. Everyone would know their brand name for sure. They shop there every weekend to improve their homes, and they are deploying solar across a large portfolio of their facilities, and they're doing a great job. And I think their work is to be celebrated because they're actually taking action. They're taking ownership of their energy. They're reducing their costs. And when we asked them, why are you not considering more than solar? The response was, well, we just don't know how to. And we think that maybe batteries are too expensive. And so we're just going solar for now. And maybe we'll consider that later. So I wanted to run an analysis just to see what the difference would be. So I chose just one of their facilities and looked at solar only versus solar plus batteries. And so the solar only system had a net present value over the life of the facility of 7.6 mil. The 25-year energy cost savings versus buying energy just from the utility was $36 million. And the emission reduction was just shy of 36%. So awesome system. Don't get me wrong, this is an incredible system. But then if you combine that with a battery, the MPV jumped to 11.3 million. The energy cost savings went from the 36 million to 61.6 million, so almost double. And the emissions reduction went from 36% to 58% reduction versus buying utility-only power. So you can just see the power of considering battery, and that's just one additional technology. There are many other options: gas, diesel, wind, EVs. There's lots of fuel cells. There's lots of ways we can go. But in this particular example, it just highlights the opportunity that's being left on the table. And when you map out that one project across thousands of facilities within this portfolio, you're literally leaving hundreds of millions to billions of dollars on the table. And so the key is, by owning your power and proactively planning and investing, will actually result in you deploying the right system and creating the right profitable and sustainable outcomes. And, as we keep talking about, this will truly differentiate your business for decades to come. So invest now, do the system design. It may seem complex, but Dan, what do you have to close us out in terms of simplifying this complexity?
Yeah, it is complex. The whole industry is relatively new, and it's great to see so many companies wanting to jump on this. But really, we've developed VECKTA to do the heavy lifting for companies and with companies to address these pain points and simplify and accelerate these incredible outcomes. And it's not, as we talked about in the review of the portfolio, not all of the facilities are going to yield these results, but oftentimes the companies are going to have many facilities that have great potential outcomes. And it's just a matter of identifying what is right for that particular site, given all the particular nuances, and then getting all of the key information around the table to get the powers that be within an organization excited about deploying a project. So we're here. We're supporting clients nationally, globally, to unlock the trapped value within their businesses. And it really starts with after you've determined where the high value sites are, what is it that's going to be best for this particular site? So excited to dig into kind of how we move from here into procuring these systems and getting the right partners at the table in the next Pain Point series. But for now, this was a fun one.
It was great. Appreciate you. Thanks, Dan.
Take care, guys.
We receive a lot of questions from business leaders around the world wanting to learn more about the energy transition, what is possible, and where to start. So to help you stay informed and up to date on best practices, opportunities, risks, and success stories, we created an industry newsfeed at VECKTA.com/news with all our podcasts, blogs, and newsletter. Check it out and connect with Dan, myself, and the VECKTA team to learn more. Cheers and have a good one.